Okay, everyone, here's a nice little review on the quadratic formula. Here we go. So, first of all, guys, by now I hope you have it memorized. Okay? Negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. And we use it when a quadratic's equal to 0, and we need to get it in order in standard form. So those are the basic rules we follow, right? So, for example, take a look at this. Now, we already have the graph done, but if you look at my standard form here, see how a equals 2. Notice how the b equals 3. In other words, the x number is always your b, the x squared number is always your a. And finally, the negative 1 there is your c. So that's really, should make that a little bit obvious there, negative 1. And that's my a, b, and c, right? Because it's equal to 0, I can solve this with the quadratic formula. And here we go. I'm going to take the negative of b, plus or minus. Now, let's just go ahead and plug in the numbers. I don't know what I was thinking there. So the negative of the 3, because b is 3, plus or minus square root. We're going to take the b squared minus 4 times a times c. Be careful with your negatives. All divided by 2 times a. And this is where we just double check, Notice how I plugged in my b correctly, which was 3. Notice how I plugged in my a correctly. Those are positive 2's, right? And finally, my c was negative 1. Now it's just a matter of doing the math, right? I have right here negative 3 plus or minus 2 times 2 is 4. That's my denominator. The square root part. Now here's where, of course, normally you would get your calculator if you need to help you. But let's see what I can do without. I know 3 squared is 9. I know right here I have negative 4 times 2 times negative 1. That's a positive 8. So I have the square root of 17. So now I definitely am going to need my calculator. To keep this simple, guys, we're just going to use one decimal place, okay? Now, the square root of 17, guys, is approximately 4.1. So, we now have negative 3 plus 4.1 divided by 4, which is 1.1 divided by 4. And 1.1 divided by 4 is 0.275. So rounding off, let's just say that's 0.3. Again, we're not going to be as precise. We just want to get close to the right answers. Now, what about negative 3 if I minus 4.1? Okay, divided by 4. Well, that's negative 7.1 divided by 4, which is negative 1.775. So we'll just say that's negative 1.8. So, guys, these two answers, 0.3 and negative 1.8, are my solutions, right? And if we look at our graph right here, guys, there's my 0.3, okay? And right over there is my negative 1.8. So, on the final or any quiz or test, guys, don't forget that the quadratic formula actually helps you find these roots right here, again, at 0.3 and negative 1.8. It's where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, so pause the video if you need to. So, let's do one more, hopefully a little bit faster. So, first of all, notice it's not equal to 0. So the first thing we got to do, guys, is add 8x to both sides. I got to get equal to 0. I also want this in order. So I have 4x squared plus 8x minus 1 equal to 0. And since we have it equal to 0, I now know what my A, B, and C's are, right? Let's go right to the formula. We're going to take the negative of B plus or minus square root. All right, B squared minus 4 times A times C, all divided by 2 times A. Again, follow the yellow. I plugged in my B, positive B, or positive 8 is B, correctly. I plugged in my A's correctly, and I plugged in my C, negative 1, correctly. So let's see what we have now. Negative 8 plus or minus square root. Denominator, 2 times 4 is 8. Now, 8 squared, guys, is 64 minus, and that right there, guys, is a negative 16. So we end up with a plus 16, which is, therefore, negative 8 plus or minus square root of 80 over 8. Now, to save time on the video, guys, we would do square root of 80 on our calculator. We would plus or minus with negative 8 and divide by 8, and we would get 2 real solutions again. And if we were to graph it, it would not be exactly like this one, but we would actually see again where it crossed the x-axis, right? But I didn't want to talk too much about or expand this video too much longer, guys. But hopefully with this video you can practice a little bit with a quadratic formula. Please remember, it must equal 0. It must be in order to find the correct A, B, and C's. And then it's just a matter of using the quadratic formula, which frankly you should have memorized by now. So guys, please keep studying for my final. I'll see you in class.